at what did I do in my lifestyle in order for me to live a normal, healthy, and full life while being diagnosed with lupus. So that we can drink a glass of water to good health. You need to be passionate about your health and take responsibility for your health. No one can do it for you. You need to be willing and ready to change your lifestyle and live a healthier life.
Would you like to start to share with us how old were you when you started to feel symptoms and what happened?
In the year that I turned 22, I started to experience pains within my fingers. It's a feeling that I struggle to explain to people because it's not that I've hurt my finger or knocked it or one of those things. It's literally, it felt like the bones inside the skin was actually aching and sore. And I remember talking to my colleagues at that stage, and they just said to me, you know, don't worry too much. Maybe it's just growing fingers or needles and pins, or, you know, maybe you've just got winter fingers, or, you know, kind of like not taking it too seriously. And I also didn't take it seriously because, you know, you don't know anything of lupus, so you don't think of, okay, maybe it could be lupus.
Yes.
And then eventually the hands became so bad that I actually weren't able to pick up things anymore. For instance, just a simple ability to pick up a blanket from the floor actually became painful.
Sure.
Like, for instance, in summer, you would throw off the blankets because you're too hot. And then during the course of the night, you want to pick up the blanket because you may be cold. Then that picking up the blanket was just too sore. It was just too painful. And then it spread to my shoulders and into my hips. So what basically happened is my hips and my shoulders were so sore that I lost a lot of normal ability to do, you know, the ability to do normal things. For instance, I couldn't do my hair anymore myself. My mom had to help me to do my hair because raising your arm above was just too sore. So she had to help me to wash my hair. She had to help me tie my hair. Sometimes she even had to help me put on a top. Because, and I remember when I had my arm in the air, I had to wiggle, you know, I had to wiggle or, you know, like use a certain way of getting the arm down, basically with as less pain as possible. So that's actually when it started to go to my hips and my shoulders and my hands started becoming so sore that we decided, well, I have to go see a physician.
Yes.
So we went to see a physician and he did x-rays and blood tests, etc. And he couldn't find anything that, you know, that he could diagnose me for. So what he said is that he suspects that I have a disease or a virus, actually. I have a virus that is mimicking rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
Now, rheumatoid arthritis is a symptom of lupus, which we've mentioned, the painful joints.
Yes.
And rheumatoid arthritis is different than your normal arthritis. It is basically the immune system attacks the tissue, you know, between the bones. So you get the arthritis because the tissue is actually then damaged in between. So it is an arthritis, but it's an autoimmune arthritis. So he thought I just had a virus that's mimicking as rheumatoid arthritis, and I was given a set of cortisone and other medication just to see if it would take it away.
And did it take it away?
It did take it away, yes. I took it for quite a few months and it eventually went away. And then I thought, okay, well, now I can go on with my life and everything is fine.
And it wasn't fine.
And it wasn't fine.
So how long after this, now that you thought, you know, everything is fine, I'm using medication, the symptoms has subsided, when did anything happen again that you thought, yo, something is wrong? Because, you know, I think we as a people, we have a knack that something happens, you feel something is weird, but you're like, it will just, it will, like the people told you at work, you know, it's just the change of seasons. We like to suppress things with our reasoning because we just don't want to expect the worst.
Yes.
But sometimes we just have to take the courage, pluck up the courage and go to the doctor. Just because it could actually prevent deaths if we go to him early enough with something that's different, that's abnormal.
Yes.
So what happened next?
What had happened next is, this is now the next year. This was about 2005. So I had a few months where I didn't have any symptoms. And then in 2005, I started experiencing the white fingers and the blue nails. And this was actually in winter. So I just thought, well,
Once again, it's normal.
it's normal, it's winter, you know, the blood circulation is probably not working right. So, but what I do remember is I would actually take my hands and put it in extremely hot water just out of desperation to actually, you know, warm up my fingers so that the blue nails could go away. Sometimes it was so bad that even just doing this, it's like I can't feel. I can't feel what I'm touching, but I'm touching. It's difficult to explain, but I'm sure, you know, people will understand. And, well, I just ignored that, and it went away because winter went away. And then during that year, around about November, this is now 2005, I started becoming really ill. What happened was I started to experience fever, like I mentioned earlier, just constant fever, like between 39 to 40 degrees Celsius on a regular basis. I would have this fever and it just wasn't going away. So I went to a general practitioner, and he suspected that perhaps I have kidney infection or bladder infection. Eventually he also thought maybe it was that. And he just couldn't, whatever he gave me to treat it, just didn't help. I just stayed sick, and I even sometimes became worse. And that was when he actually referred me to a physician, a specialist physician, and I was taken to hospital and I was hospitalized.
Sure.
And then there I spent 3 weeks.
3 weeks in the hospital. And
Yes.
you're how old? 23 years old at this
23
time.
at that stage.
Sure. And so what happened in hospital? Did they also just give you medication so that the symptoms can subside, or did it actually get worse as you were lying in hospital? What happened?
Yeah, while I was lying in hospital, I guess for the doctors at first it was difficult to actually give me medication because they don't know what's wrong with me.
Yes.
So at first they're just treating the symptoms, you know, until they can actually find out what was wrong. Eventually, after a long period, it was probably at least 2 weeks before they were able to diagnose me. They eventually diagnosed me with lupus. And like I said, I didn't know what it was, and I had to go research on it, etc. Fortunately for me, and I say fortunate because usually what happens with lupus is people are not diagnosed very early, because sometimes the symptoms is so confusing that you can't actually really diagnose lupus immediately.
Yes.
Where when I was hospitalized for those 3 weeks, every morning when the doctor came to my room to have, you know, to check on me, I would have another symptom.
Sure.
Every morning there will be something that happened through the night that would just create havoc in my body, and the sisters would write it down, and, you know, the doctors kind of had their hands in their head or in their hair, you know.
Yes. Trying to figure out what was going on.
Yes. And eventually they did diagnose me. And what then happened is, one specific night, this is now after I've been diagnosed, I can remember one specific night that I was laying in bed, and what happened usually is I would now have these high fevers, and then I would get this cold shivers. So I'm constantly either putting on blankets or throwing off blankets.
Yes.
Because, you know, then you are shivering, you know, so you're getting so cold, and then next minute you're so hot you want no blankets. And what would happen is the sisters would then have to come in the course and give me a Voltaren injection to actually just get the fever down. And this one particular night, what happened, I got up, I sat up in my bed, it was around about 4 o'clock in the morning, I sat up in my bed, and I wanted to go to the bathroom. And as I sat up in the bed, everything in front of me went pitch dark.
Sure.
And I realized I'm lightheaded, and I will not be able to walk to the bathroom myself. So I lied down back on the bed, and I pressed the button for the nurse to come, and I asked her if she would just help me to the bathroom, because I don't think I'll be able to walk there on my own. To this day, I cannot remember how I came or how I went from the bed to the bathroom. I must have been in and out of consciousness without me even realizing it, because I can't recall that memory.
You only have flashes of
I
what
only
happened.
have flashes of that night. And the next flash that I remember is actually sitting on the toilet, looking up her in her eyes, and then falling against the chest because I've just felt so weak.
This is now the nurse that helped
This
you
is
to
the
do-
nurse that helped me to the
Yes.
bathroom. And then I blanked out again. And then the next thing I remember is gaining consciousness again, and I've got, for me it felt like panic nurses in my
Mhm.
bathroom. Maybe they weren't panicking, maybe I just experienced it bad. But for me it was like, because there was about 3 of them in the bathroom, and it was bedding on the floor because they were scared if I fall I would hurt myself, and obviously trying to get me to the bed and find out what was going on.
Yes.
So that's the next thing I remember. And then the next thing I remember is just being back on bed, not remembering how I got back and forth.
Yes.
And then when I got back to the bed, that's when they took my blood pressure, yes. And my blood pressure was 45/35.
Sure. That's
Which is very bad. If you know anything
Sure.
of our blood pressure, you'll know your blood pressure should be 120/80 or 110/70. So
Yes.
45/35 is a really dangerous count.
supposed to be dead.
Yes. So the next thing I hear is just phone the doctor, phone a mom. That's that's all I'm hearing in the background. And then they just took my bed and they rushed me to ICU. And in that process, I also lost consciousness, not remembering much. And then coming into ICU, they put me on a whole lot of tests, testing my lungs and my heart and putting me on the machines, etc. And what happened that night is that lupus actually attacked my red blood cells.
Sure.
So my hemoglobin dropped so low and that's what caused, because usually low blood pressure is related to low hemoglobin. If your hemoglobin drop, your blood pressure also drops.
Yes.
In my case, both just dropped radically.
Drastically,
Yes,
sure.
drastically. So my doctor did eventually come to the hospital, and I spent the day in ICU. And fortunately, I didn't die. Everything was fine.
I'm very glad you didn't.
So then I spent the day in ICU just until I was stabilized, and I was put on medication just to lift the hemoglobin. Fortunately, I didn't have to have a blood transfusion, although that was his, how can I say, his plan B.
Yes.
You know, he said that he's first going to try the medication. If that doesn't work, I'll have to have a blood transfusion. And then I spent another weekend in the hospital, and then I was discharged, and that was the end of that 3 weeks. But I remember when I was discharged, the nurses, while they were discharging me, they were actually saying, because he actually booked me off for a whole week, for a whole month from work. So the nurses were saying, now you can go to the gym and you can relax and do some exercise. And the doctor immediately was like, no, and he's like, you ladies speaking to the nurses don't know that this young woman almost died.
Sure.
And he basically said to me, I have to treat my body with hand gloves because I actually, survived death.
Yes.
So that when I saw him and I saw the look on his face, I realized this was serious.
This is life or death.
Yes. So then I was,
But how did he react when he heard that your blood pressure was 45/35 and you're in ICU?
he told me that he actually rushed through Red Robots. He said to me afterwards, he thought that when he comes to the hospital, I would actually be dead already.
Sure.
Because of obviously the nurses telling him, everything that he obviously expected the worst.
And in the hospital, you went through everything, even a lumbar punch.
Yes, I've had a lumbar punch and also a bone marrow biopsy. So
Sure. And was it sore?
I
Or
remember
did they sedate you?
No, with the lumbar punch, they don't sedate you at all. I remember when the doctor came to me to tell me that they're going to do a lumbar punch because they used the Afrikaans word, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And I said to him, okay, what is the English word? And he said to me, a lumbar punch. And immediately I started to cry because I've heard stories of a lumbar punch and how painful it is. Because what they basically do with a lumbar punch is they put a needle in your spine. And then they draw fluid from your brain to actually see if the brain is affected in any way or whatever. So it is quite a painful process. You have to sit like this basically while they work on your back. And then after that, there's quite a few hours that you have to lay down. You're not allowed to get up. You have to eat laying down. You have to, do your toilet routine on the bed in a bucket, etc., etc. So I think what helped is when they told me I'm going to have a lumbar punch, I just kind of tried to use mind over matter kind of thing, like, okay, just relax, just be calm, because they kept saying to me, if you stay calm, it will not be sore. So
Yes.
it was sore, but it wasn't as bad as I expected, because I really tried to keep breathing and keep, myself calm. And then the bone marrow biopsy wasn't sore, because they sedate you from your hips down, and then they basically just work on your bone marrow here in your back. So that I didn't really feel anything. No.
So you went through all these things, and some of the people that's watching said, "Did he speak to you in Afrikaans?" Yes, our language is actually Afrikaans, so that's why he spoke in Afrikaans. For those of you who don't know, so you went through all these things. 23 years old. I mean, you've got your life ahead of you. This is the start of life. People who are 40, they will say, no, that's the start of life. But 23 years old, that's the start of your life. I mean, you still have to meet your husband.
Yeah.
It's the future husband at that moment. I wasn't in the picture yet when you went through all these things. So you've got your life in front of you. You've just spent 3 weeks of almost a nightmare in hospital.
I can remember every night before, because usually the sisters would have a routine. You have your visiting hours, and then once the visitors go, you get your medication, etc., etc., and you get ready for bed. And every night I can remember just wishing for a good night.
You were afraid for what was coming.
I was always afraid of the night, because the night was always the worst. And every night there was something.
Sure. And when you left the hospital, when your mom took you out, was it like you were in a new world? How did you feel?
I think that day I've probably felt what it must feel like to be someone just staying in a little house and never go anywhere, like a hermit, because I spent 3 weeks in the hospital not seeing the outside world. And I remember the day when I left the doors of the hospital, it was almost like I just want to go back, because it's like suddenly what I'm facing is just too much. You're so overwhelmed with the world, because you live in such a confined little space that you get used to that, and then when you have to go out of that again, then... And it was actually quite strange. When I actually left the hospital after 3 weeks, things in my neighborhood changed. Like, buildings were almost finished that was started before I went in. So it's weird. You kind of feel like life is gone by without you for a little while.
So the next few years after now they've diagnosed you. You have lupus. They've put you on medication. How many medication did you take?
I probably drank about 16 to 18 tablets a day.
Sure. How many milligrams of cortisone did you take?
Between 20 to 30 a day, depending on how bad lupus was. Because how lupus works is you have a flare. That would mean that lupus is active. And then it goes in remission a while. So when you usually have a flare, they push up your cortisone or your steroids. That's the other word that is usually used for it. And then obviously my cortisones will depend on how active the disease is.
Okay. And of course the medication has an effect on you, because all of the medication you take has side effects. So were you on antidepressants?
Yes. I think I was on antidepressants for 2 reasons, if I think back. The first thing is I eventually, through my research, discovered that cortisone actually causes depression.
Okay.
So now you kind of have this circle going, this ripple effect. You have to have the cortisones, and that makes you depressed, so now you have to drink antidepressants. And I used to drink 2 antidepressants, and one of them causes insomnia, and the other one causes night terrors.
So the night is just like,
so,
you can't sleep, and if you do sleep, you have nightmares.
Yes, so it's a vicious cycle, actually. And then also, of course, you have to drink like something that would help the stomach lining, because you're drinking so many medication, it irritates the stomach lining.
Sure.
So you have to drink something for that. And then there's another medication that they usually give, which is called Nivaquin, which is actually a malaria tablet, which they give. It's almost standard, actually, with lupus treatment, if I can call it like that. And the sad thing about it is, if you use it long term, you can actually go colorblind.
Sure. I just want to come in here, and I just want to say, maybe you're watching at this moment and you're thinking, Chantell, that's what happened to me. I'm that person that's taking 16 tablets a day, 20, 30 tablets a day because of my lupus. I'm also having the night terrors. I also am depressed. I also have all these things that you are going through just from the medication, and I really want to know, what can I do to fight back so that I don't have to use it anymore? And at this moment, Chantell doesn't take any medication for lupus. And now you're sitting there, what? No medication? Yes, that's why we are so excited to share with you during this series what Chantell did so that she can sit here, no night terrors, unless she had too much pasta just before she went to bed. But no more nightmares, no depression. And this is what we want to share. There is hope for people living with lupus. You can live a healthy, vibrant life, and you can. Does she look like someone that has lupus? No, you don't look that way. And even the cortisone, if you take a lot of cortisone, with the depression, so, women are more tended to go to the fridge when you're depressed. So you picked up weight also.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of her back then. Doesn't look like she looks now. It's because of the weight she picked up. So that makes you even more depressed. So you're 23 years old. You're bedridden. We didn't even say it yet, but you will tell that's part of the story now. For 3 years, she was bedridden. You've got all these symptoms just from the medication, not even talking about lupus, in and out of the hospital. It sounds like a nightmare.
It was.
It sounds like one big nightmare. So what happened during these 3 years after you were diagnosed?
Okay. I just want to add, with regards to the antidepressants, I mentioned that, I had the antidepressants, drinking the antidepressants because of the cortisones causing the depression. But also, like you just said, I was bedridden for 3 years of my life. So you can just imagine, if you are bedridden and you can't go anywhere or do anything, you become depressed.
Yes.
So you are depressed because of the way you feel. You are depressed because you can't do anything. You are depressed because you feel that you've lost your life, in the sense of you can't live a full life,
Yes.
You are depressed because the world just goes by without you. Some people even lose friends when they are diagnosed with lupus and are so sick, because some people just don't understand.
Yes, what you are going through.
Yeah, and the thing is with lupus, today you could look perfectly fine, and tomorrow you could be bedridden. So people don't always understand that, and then
Yes,
that
it is
causes
difficult because they haven't experienced it, so they think, but yesterday you were fine.
Yes, exactly.
Now you can't come to work.
Yes.
So maybe she's faking it or something like that, and that makes you even feel worse. So we need to be sensitive to those who has lupus. Don't even try to understand what they're going through. Just be there for them, and just help them in the situation wherever you can. And I just want to say that we're going to share with you in these presentations to come how you can use less medication by implementing things in your lives, of course, with the consulting your doctor, not just saying, let's just take everything away. We're not going to say that once, that your doctor needs to tell you to stop it. Not we will. And then we're going to share with you even where can you run to so you don't have to go to the fridge because you're depressed, or anywhere else to get rid of your depression. That's the secret ingredient we will give you at the end of these presentations. So you need to keep on watching so that you can get all the information. So the 3 years.
Yes. So after I was discharged, after that 3 weeks, I actually went into the most difficult 3 years of my life, probably. Being bedridden, all I could do is sleep, eat, and sleep and eat.
Yes.
There was moments, of course, where I was able to maybe go out with some friends or family. Fortunately, at that stage, I worked at a lawyer's firm with wonderful people, so I didn't lose my job.
Sure.
They basically said to me, you come in whenever you can. And sometimes 3 months would go by and I wouldn't go in. But then if I had the strength for one day, I would go in. And for one day I would try to work. Usually it was just half day because I just couldn't get through the day. And then I would go back home. And for them it was, especially the director, the boss of the firm, for him it was important that I always had something to live for.
Yes.
His mindset was, if he takes away my job, I'll have nothing to live for, and I could just give up.
And then you can just stay in bed in any case.
Yeah, what reason do I have to get up? So, and the great thing about it is, even when I didn't go in, like for instance, for that 3 months, he paid me a little bit still, just to cover my
basic expenses.
Yeah, like your debit orders.
Yes.
Even during the 3 months that I didn't go to work once. So I really felt blessed, that there are people like that out there still today that are willing to go the extra mile for someone. And I think also what helped them a lot is because I kind of when I had the opportunity to come into work and I felt a little bit okay for the day, when I come in, they would usually give me stuff that no one has time to get to.
Yes.
So in a sense, it was a good thing for them, because then for that few hours that I was able to be there, I could actually help them in an important way. But other than that, most of that 3 years was me in my bed.
And were there days that you could hardly even walk to the toilet because of
Yes.
this extreme fatigue that you had?
Yes, there was days that I was just too tired or in just too much pain that I actually had to crawl to the bathroom because it was just too difficult to get there. And then I would sleep the days past because you are constantly tired. You can't explain that to someone who has not felt what it feels like to be that tired. You actually become tired of being tired.
Yes.
That's how bad it gets. So that was my 3 years, and then on top of that, every second month for that 3 years, my lupus would flare. So what that means is all the symptoms is haywire, and I needed to be hospitalized all over again. Then it's tests and it's drips and it's medication adjustment, etc., until I'm stabilized, and then I go back home. And then usually it goes good for about 2 months, then it's back to the hospital. So that's how it went for 3 years, basically. Sure. And it was hard because, you're 24, 25, 26, and this is your life.
Yes, and for some of your friends probably having boyfriends and getting married and moving on with their lives, they have a career, and here you are in bed, depressed, turning to social networking and movies to escape your circumstances and food. And I believe there are people sitting here watching today saying, yes, that's me. You watch rather a movie to escape your circumstances.
Or sleep.
Or sleep. And what we will, once again, I want to make this point, what we're going to share with you is how to get out of that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to sit there, so that there's a better life out there for you. And this is what we're going to share. So after 3 years, did you just give up and say, you know what, this is just my life, I've just been dealt a bad card, and this is just my life, I'm going to live this way, and if I die, I die, if I live, I live. Or did you decide that you're going to fight back and you're going to take responsibility for your situation and do research, or what happened?
I think I went through various phases.
Were there even a time that you thought, ending it is better?
Yes, that's why I say I think I went through various phases. There were definitely phases where you ask the question, why me? Or there's definitely phases where you ask, is it even worth going on? And I can clearly remember many moments, for instance, times where I would lay in the bath or in my bed, that suicide just seems a better option than living this kind of life. And eventually I came out of that deep hole, still being depressed, but I actually went into a phase of desperation.
Yes.
I was so desperate after that 3 years to live a normal life and to be healthy that I started to do research. I started to do research on the internet. I found a book that actually talks about treating lupus differently. So I started to do research of alternative ways to treat lupus than just doctors and medications and hospitals, etc. And this is basically what I've been doing ever since, is treating lupus naturally and differently, and I've just reaped the benefits of it on a regular basis.
So since you've been implementing, and this is what we're going to share with you, so you need to stay tuned. So since you've been implementing it, did you have like a whoop, you were there, you have had it made after a couple of months, or was it still, did it take time to get where you are today?
It took time, because it's very important to remember that the body heals slowly, naturally.
Yes.
You can't expect the body to have a quick fix.
The damage that has been done after 23 years to be healed in 5 months.
Yeah. So it was definitely a process. It took time. It took perseverance. Some days I felt like, I will never get better, and then other days day just looked brighter. So there were days where it was going well. There were days it was going really well, and then there was days it was going really bad. So even in treating my body naturally, you still have these dips, and sometimes the dips are very bad. But what I've found over the last few years is that the dips have become less, and the dips don't go so deep anymore, and even the period between the dips becomes shorter. to the point where I sit here today, and I don't actually know when last I've had a dip related, to lupus.
Mhm. And how long since you've been in a hospital because of a flare?
5 years.
5 years, sure.
And it's 5 years since I've been without medication.
Mhm.
It's in 2008 that I actually stopped drinking my medication. So it's been 5 years that I'm not drinking medicine medication
Yes,
for lupus, and also not have to go into hospital.
sure. And I believe there are people watching now saying, sure, Chantell, I want to know what you did.
Oh.
But for them to know that, you need to come back to the next episode. You need to watch the rest. This is just the foundation that we have laid to give you Chantell's story. And me as her husband, I've experienced, about 3.5 years of her life as she's being healed. The worst part I did not experience, or I didn't know when it happened. And what we want to share with you in the rest of the episodes is how Chantell, or what she did, so that she could become the person she is today when it comes to her health. So do you have any last thoughts for us?
I think what I just want to say is that, I'm passionate about this.
Mhm.
I received my life back. There was a stage in that 3 years that I thought, well, this is going to be my life for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And that I even thought, like I said, it's better than dying than actually going on.
Yes.
And so I am passionate to help other people to have their life back.
Mhm.
Because there is a way to do it if you really are willing to follow the natural way.
Mhm.
There is a way to do it if you are really willing and you really want to have a full and healthy life.
Yes.
So I'm passionate about this series, and I hope that you are as excited as what I am to hear everything that we are going to share with you guys, and that you will come back to listen more, and that as you learn new things, you will implement it in your life, and then as you experience the wonderful benefits of it on your body, that you will just keep going until you basically have full health. So I'm really excited.
I am too, and we're looking forward to the rest of the episodes.
Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Goodbye.